welcome to Perpetually Exasperated, the podcast where we've chosen to read new, best-selling books from both sides of the political spectrum so you don't have to, and tell you how, at times, they've got the right idea, but mostly how they're missing the point of why everything kinda sucks! I'm Joseph.
And I'm Joseph's Sanity, presently in a massive tailspin. In this next episode, we've decided to do something a bit different. We are going to be discussing two books, both by sitting U.S. senators. First, from the right, Oklahoma's senior Senator James Lankford brings us Turnaround, America's Revival, billed as, quote, a powerful challenge from Senator Lankford to pay more attention to who we are rather than just what we do. And on the left, we have, quote, Anti-Semitism in America, a Warning, by New York's very own senior senator and Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer, described as, quote, shedding light on the Jewish American experience and sounding the alarm about the troubling resurgence of anti-Semitism.
What the hell? A doubleheader? Okay. So, let's see how this keeps us perpetually exasperated, and why you should be as well. Okay, hold on. First of all, I need to revisit this. A doubleheader? What the hell brought this about? You know that one of these is a pretty heavy fucking subject, right?
All too aware.
Uh-huh.
But I may or may not have been broken reading these books. I think I've topped off my tank of shit I can take in written format, and my cup, as it were, overfloweth. I need to stop reading shit books, and I don't want to space this out anymore, and I promise I actually do have a theme here. This is going to make sense.
All right, then. Well, buckle up, folks. Settle in with your beverage of choice. Adult beverages for the adults, not adult beverages for the not adults. And if you choose not to, hey, that's fine with me. Just don't tell us or anyone else, and do not, under any circumstances, blame us. We're not your moms or dads. So on that note, cheers. Okay, let's just get into it, shall we?
Yeah, I think this is a behemoth best tackled in bits, so let's start with Mr. Langford.
Oh, hey, I love Mr. Langford, Mr. Folksy Langford.
I will give him this. It is a much better written book than I expected. Not in terms of the structure of the ideas, but in the way he delivers them. He's a youth pastor, and he's very, very clearly a youth pastor.
Oh,
he is
yeah.
super personable, his anecdotes are super relatable, his positions seem quite principled. He, of course, narrated his own audiobook, and it is probably one of the best speakers we've had so far, probably because he's a preacher.
Yeah, no, that does help. And look, in this case, I read the book via Libby, and I agree, this was a much, much more digestible book. I'm going to get this out of the way, though. I need to point out the following at the beginning of Chapter 2, We the People. Quote, 2 letters make one word with a great deal of significance. We. Though Thomas Jefferson had no part in the writing of the Constitution, the idea of we the people was built into the first lines of our Declaration of Independence when Jefferson wrote, we hold these truths to be self-evident. In other words, this is what we believe. Did I mention that Thomas Jefferson was a redhead? It's hard to tell on the $20 bill, but trust me, redheads recognize other redheads. Unquote. My guy, that's the fucking $2 bill. Andrew Jackson, who's also a redhead, by the way, fun fact, is on the $20 bill. Somebody fucked up. Did you listen to that? Is that true, or is this just a fuck up on Libby?
No, it's you're correct. It's in the audiobook, too. He made that mistake twice.
Oh, my God. Okay, so, you know what? It doesn't matter. Overall, this was a much more enjoyable, read?
Sure.
Yeah, like, it wasn't folksy slop like Neil Gorsuch's sleepwalking train wreck overruled.
True.
Still haven't read it. Still haven't finished it.
Still never should. Fuck that book.
Fuck that book. Look, I will say also it got a little bit boring and overdone with the folksy shit. Like, it kind of reminded me of Leah Littman's Lawless, where she would occasionally put pop culture references in there. Where
occasionally?
Every single fucking chance
yeah,
she
that
got.
Sounds better.
But it wasn't overdone, like, to the point where I couldn't read it. Like, it worked, but it's fine. It's fine. It was a readable book, and I will give Senator Lankford that. And, you know, he sounds like a reasonable guy, you know? He's like, guys, let's just all get along. I know we're not going to agree on everything here, but you know what? It's okay. This is America. This is what we do. We just talk this stuff out. And I'm going to keep doing that in the Senate, and I think you at home should do that as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing is that in contrast to Littman, who I've watched her podcast, she's just a dork. She's a dork who likes like references to cool things. I don't think James did this by accident. Like, this book is really obviously intentionally heavy on these allegorical stories that are chosen to paint him as like this down-home Oklahoman who just loves his family and his country and God. A simple man who just, wants good and simple things for good and simple Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah, this is kind of like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington vibes here.
Yes.
He's just an everyman who was called to the service, kind of like being called by God into, pastoralism and whatnot. And that's just what he's there for. He's there to bring some sanity back to the Senate. So, fine, fair enough. Where's the lie?
Well, so I think his Senate campaign is a good example of the dichotomy between how he represents himself and the reality. So, in the book, he's kind of just representing as kind of like a calling for God. God came down to him. It was like, James, you must represent the people. And then he started his campaign, and all these people in his circle just were also called by God to really help these people get their voice in the Senate.
That sounds oddly coincidental.
Bingo bango, that's bullshit.
Oh, okay. What happened?
There was a 2014 special election after, I think his name was Tom Coburn, resigned.
That sounds about right, yeah.
And James raised a total of $4.2 million.
Ooh.
Want to guess how many of those were small dollar donations?
15%?
9.
What the fuck?
9%.
Whoa.
9% of his donors was from small individuals. The rest of it was from either PACs or large individual contributors with industry ties. You'll never guess who the largest industry donor was.
He mentioned big oil a couple of times. Is it oil? Is it oil and gas?
Bingo bango!
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And that's my problem with this entire damn book. If you strip out all the folksy anecdotes, so like 75 to 80% of all the book, what you're left with is this very thin layer of like semi-policy position directly influenced by his donors in oil and gas and healthcare, and of course a healthy dose of party line from the tons of leadership PACs that donated as well. He's owned!
Yeah.
And I imagine he's owned partly because he is so damn capable of representing himself as just, a little youth pastor who went to Washington to get Oklahoma fixed up. Like, it's bullshit.
It is bullshit, but it's really effective.
Yes, it is, which is why they paid him that money.
They paid him a lot of good money, and he sounds so reasonable. He is by far, even beyond, again, I can't stop bringing this up, Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch just sounded boring, but Langford truly sounds like, even though he has admitted that he is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, he is very passionate about his conservatism. God, he sounds so reasonable. But ultimately, he's just a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington to keep funneling funding and tax breaks to big oil and big gas. Wow, that title sucks.
Yes, it does. And, he's so powerful because he is good at representing the interests of his donors as the interest of his people. He does work for his constituency, but he works for his donors first. Sure, oil and gas is a massive employer in Oklahoma, and maybe you could argue that those contributions could be for the good of the workers and the people of Oklahoma, given that their economy is dependent on that industry, I guess?
Yeah, no, that has been an argument that's been in place for decades now in regards to this entire idea of us going green. The problem with green right now is the expense it costs and the logistical challenges of setting up specific parts of green industry in specific locations. And it's also the fact that a lot of these people who are in the oil and the gas industry, or, hey, let's just get out of Oklahoma and go to another place that's heavily reliant on fossil fuels, West Virginia. Coal. Coal is everything in West Virginia.
Yep.
You take out coal, what the fuck else is in Virginia aside from opioids? Also, that was super mean. I am so sorry.
Well, I mean, I think even West Virginia would admit that they are full of opioids in a way that they would very much like to change.
Yeah, no, and that's fair, and that's a good argument to have. he brought it up very briefly in one of his chapters where it's like, yeah, I'm totally fine with balancing out big oil and big gas. He didn't say it like that, but that's the vibe with the green energy. But here's the thing, it's really hard. And all of these people whose livelihoods depend on oil and gas are going to be negatively affected by this. So, we gotta balance out the fossil fuels with the green energy.
But actually, you bringing up West Virginia and opioids is really interesting because this demonstrates exactly the kind of deception that James is involved in. So he gets donations from oil and gas companies and then represents himself as fighting on behalf of oil and gas workers. But that's not what his voting record says. He is deeply anti-regulation. And fun fact, oil and gas is not just good for Oklahomans. It is poisoning their water. It is increasing earthquakes by like a factor of 10.
Yeah.
Companies are undercharged for violations, so spills are often not cleaned up or cleaned up very, very slowly. James doesn't have anything to say about this. And fun fact, his other largest donor is the healthcare industry.
Oh, of course.
And you know what Oklahoma has, in addition to oil and gas? An opioid problem. Partially because of all of those injuries happening on the fucking fields. Because oil and gas is not a safe job. You get shit crushed, you fall off stuff, you get burned. So you get prescribed opiates by his other major fucking donors.
Holy shit, that's evil.
And it would be evil enough if he was just some fat cat in Washington not talking about how he represents his people and God, but he does in order to cover up the fact that his actual motivations are his donors.
Oh my God. And that's truly the saddest bit here because, yeah, you're right. The oil and gas industry is awful for Oklahomans themselves, especially in the health field and also the environmental stuff because that poisoning water and the earthquake stuff coming from fracking.
Yep.
Fracking is a fucking awful way.
And you know what James Langford says when you criticize fracking?
What?
He says, oh, no. The earthquakes aren't from fracking.
What?
The earthquakes are from wastewater disposal, which is a necessary component of the fracking process.
Yeah, you just said fracking again.
Well, this is what I mean.
James.
Is that he is deeply invested in this kind of doublespeak. And I don't even know if he believes it himself. Maybe he does.
It's possible.
But he is unbelievably consistent in picking his donors over his people when it comes to the two of them.
And
so I don't think that that's a mistake.
No, it's not. And this is a good way to really highlight how this particular side of the Mono Party operates in the Republican side, where they are unbelievably invested in their donors, but their speech towards their constituents is based around freedom, around the lack of government regulation to better serve that freedom.
Around lower taxes, quote unquote, even though it's only lower taxes for billionaires and oil companies.
Yeah, but it's the soundbite. It's the soundbite.
You're 100% right on that.
And it allows for this idea to be in Oklahomans or West Virginians or really anybody Republicans' minds that with this lack of regulation and this lack of government oversight, they too can succeed like big oil and big gas. Like that, I feel like there's a little bit of American mythology that's still stuck there. You remember back in the 1910s and 1920s where you could just trip over oil and you could strike it rich.
Pretty much.
That's where the get rich quick scheme, the modern one, really came from. I feel like that's still embedded deep in our psyche, that as long as we can just trip our way literally into wealth and not be taxed out the ass by the government in the process, we too can make it.
Well, I imagine especially for people who are not in the category of what would be considered, quote unquote, the coastal elite, because the coastal elite garner their profit basically by being the middleman between all of the resources in the center of the country and the rest of the world. Yeah, no,
that's a very fair critique to make of the coastal elite. We'll get to that.
I mean, now logistics is like one of the most key parts of how we have a global economy. So I'm not saying that it's useless. I'm just saying that I can see how the mythology of striking it rich kind of persists in the part of the country where if you're gonna go from working on the fields to owning your own oil company, it's gonna be probably because you literally found something that nobody else knew was there.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a completely understandable mindset to have.
Yeah, versus an average coastal elite, like you can make money by figuring out an arbitrage opportunity, learning that somebody is selling pork rinds for $2.50 over here and is buying them for $3.50 over here. Yeah, people in the center of the country don't do that shit.
No.
They dig that shit out the ground and then sell it to the coastal elite who profit on it.
Yeah, but these are two sides of the same exploitative coin.
Exactly.
And these are two different kinds of mythology that make us feel like we can get around our stagnation in actual class movement, getting out of poor into, at minimum, middle class, if not rich.
Precisely. And this is the real theme of this book, and it's why it bugs me so much. It's just more corporate and donor priorities laundered through the lens of religion and personal responsibility, with just enough emphasis on the personal responsibility to make sure that you can blame people for their own bad circumstances.
Yes.
Now, does he do this directly? No. He does not say, if you aren't in a mess, it is your fault. But he does imply that a person with a good attitude towards himself and God would really just pull himself up by his bootstraps rather than complaining and waiting for handouts.
You just fucking triggered me with that goddamn statement.
Sorry.
I want to throw my beer at you right now.
Ooh, I don't believe it.
For the people at home, I am in fact drinking beer because this is the only way I'm going to get through this goddamn episode today. Anyway, not the point. Doesn't matter. You're right. This book, on its surface, is a religious self-help book.
Yes. And I personally think it's a little interesting also that through all this, Oklahoma itself is a taker state.
Oh, that's a nice callback to episode 3. Please hit like and subscribe.
Please. In addition to all of, despite the fact that they generate billions of dollars in oil revenues, we still pour more money into that state than comes out of it.
What is the money that we really pour in there? Is that kind of like subsidies for
drilling? And this is part of, so the part where he is talking about how, renewable energy is just so expensive and blah, blah. Part of the reason that renewable energy is so much more expensive than oil is because we have more than a century, I think, reasonably, of legal architecture to subsidize drilling and make sure that it's easy to do, and that if you fuck it up, you don't pay too much. None of that is being invested in renewable energy right now. So, of course, renewable energy per kilowatt is more expensive.
So it's kind of like the energy side to the farm subsidies that we've been doing for centuries.
Precisely. I think without subsidies, the average price of fuel would be much more variable geographically, but also I think the average price overall would be like $5 higher.
So kind of similar to how it is in Europe, for instance.
Fucking exactly. The only reason gas is affordable here is because we pay for it to be so.
Wow. We don't really hear about that much from the politicians.
I can't imagine why. Oh, maybe because they all donate to these motherfuckers. All of them, literally every senator has money from an oil company. Every single one.
Right, no, yeah. But going back to your point about Oklahoma being a taker state, they're not the only ones. It seems like so many of these red states, the ones in the center of the country, geographic center, mind you, not the ideological center. No. But most of these states, for better or for worse, and for understandable reasons to somewhat less understandable reasons, are the ones who are taking the most subsidies from the federal government, regardless of the category, be it healthcare subsidies, energy subsidies, food subsidies, you fucking name it, subsidies, compared to the coastal elite states, which are the givers, the creators, as it were. Isn't California itself, not to be fluffing up our state here, which has its own fucking problems, by the way, aren't we one of the biggest creators in the union?
My understanding is actually that California on its own is the 4th largest economy in the world.
Oh, we got up to 4th
I think we
now.
just beat Japan.
We're better than fucking Japan.
We have a lot of farmland. That's part of how we're doing it. Is that food is getting more expensive. But yes, we are by ourselves a totally economically sustainable country.
So wait a minute. So then, we have this dichotomy of these blue states being the creators and these red states being the takers. Again, to use this super fucking cringe terminology that we have from episode 3. And yet, here's Senator Lankford talking about how we have to have like self-help and self-reliance and all of that, which, leaving aside the politics and leaving aside a lot of the religious vocabulary and whatnot, I'll get that. I get it. He's a youth pastor. Like, it's fine to really have more of a sense of community and to be an active part of that community and to be an active positive force in that community. I understand that. But like you say, that still goes into this pull yourself up by bootstraps mentality that is at odds with reality in regards to the state that he represents. What the fuck is going on here?
Because he can take that pull yourself up by the bootstraps attitude and both use it to basically excuse any failings of his policies, but also it allows him to function as a tool to sweep under the rug and point at hardworking Oklahomans and their love of God as the reason that they can still afford to frack their entire countryside. That's not why they can afford it. They can afford it because we make sure it's affordable. He is a tool because of his ability to argue that his faith is what makes his people productive.
God.
Because what man of faith would be a corporate puppet?
I feel like that would be like a Pharisee.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you've actually read the Bible, you'd know the answer to that, but I don't imagine many modern Christians have.
And on that note, there might be a certain someone I could think of who would be a little upset about Pharisees in general.
Yeah, who would that be?
I don't know, just some brown Jew who's talking some really weird fucking
Oh,
shit.
Jesus!
Jesus!
We love Jesus here.
We fucking love Buddy Jesus Christ here. We love him. But look, by the way, I want to talk about something else that Senator Langford pointed out. Starting from Chapter 5, The Foundation. Quote, "The United States of America became the most powerful, moral, and generous nation in the history of the world because of shut up, because of our constitutionally guaranteed freedom and our distinct American spirit. We recognize our freedom comes from God and is guarded by our law and each generation's commitment to that law. We cherish our freedom." However, a recent Pew Research study noted that for adults under 30 years old, 28% had a positive view of socialism, and only 24% had a positive view of capitalism. Clearly, our nation is seeing the effect of leftist college professors, government teachers, and social media influencers, that's us by the way, who eagerly teach the next generation the problems of freedom and the benefits of socialism. However, before we blame others, we should remember that it is always the first responsibility of parents in each generation to reaffirm our foundational truths so the next generation will not fall for the lie. When adults constantly complain about our government and government leaders, the natural response from America's youth will be, what type of government might work better? The next generation needs to hear a clear and positive reaffirmation of our nation's foundational documents and values louder than our complaints about government leaders, unquote. Okay, but then in Chapter 11, Gravity, in the section Cultural Mass, quote, "People decide together which opinions and ideas have the greatest mass, even in brutal regimes like Iran, China, Venezuela, or Russia. Millions of people think and live differently from their autocratic government. Mass can be influenced by government or a leader in government, but it is not controlled by government. It doesn't mean that the crowd is always right or the ideas of the majority benefit all people. It's just accepted as normal. Something has mass because a bunch of people think it." Skipping this bit, George Washington was a historic leader, but he was also a victim of the popular belief that if you have an infection, you should just bleed it out. Bloodletting was the most popular medicinal practice at the time. In 1799, then-retired President Washington became ill and was diagnosed with what was called quinsy. It is now believed that he had an, otolaryngologic,
Close enough.
emergency known as acute epiglottitis. In layman's terms, a really bad throat infection. Thanks, James. The common treatment of the day was to bleed some to get the infection out. That, of course, we now know is a terrible idea. After multiple rounds of treatments, President Washington passed away on December 14th, 1799 at age 67, an inauspicious death for such an incredible leader. The practice of bloodletting had weight in its time. Thankfully, it doesn't anymore. Every trend, attitude, or idea started somewhere and grew into a mass, which pulled even more people into it. Posts that are trending will trend even more when they are trending. A new hairstyle, or musician, or the latest color of kitchen countertop can be a harmless popular opinion, but when a cultural trend is destructive to our present or our future, we should not ignore it. We should fight it. Just because the decline is typical doesn't mean we should ever accept cultural decline as inevitable, because it is not. Unquote. You know what, Senator James Lankford? I agree. I agree with you that every trend started somewhere, and if it grows into this mass, and it's not just a harmless popular opinion sometimes, when a cultural trend, or maybe an economic trend, is destructive to our present and our future, we shouldn't ignore it. We should fight it. That's why I want to talk to you about capitalism.
Yeah.
So, I bring this up to point out that Pew Research study with the positive view of socialism and the not as popular view of capitalism, and how we've got to reaffirm our beliefs in freedom, and we've got to reaffirm our beliefs in essentially capitalism coded as freedom. But with this, can I make a perfectly reasonable argument in his own language that capitalism is in fact a destructive, corrosive, and frankly evil economic policy that is hurting Americans regardless of their ideology or geographic position, and that includes but is not limited to Oklahomans, and therefore we can't ignore this backlash to capitalism, and instead we have to actually seriously think about alternatives to capitalism, and we can't just accept that capitalism is fundamentally good, because we accepted as fundamentally good bloodletting.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I think it's very interesting to me that James sees a restoration of belief in the system as incumbent on the subjects of that system without any change in outcome. You know what would make me actually pretty confident in those values that he stated? If we applied them to make rent affordable, to make food accessible, to make medicine accessible, and to make education accessible. If you can do that with those values, James, then I'm on board. But we've been trying that for now upwards of a century, and it's kind of just been crashing us into the ground.
Yeah.
So if you want us to believe your values, deliver with them.
Yeah.
And if you don't deliver with them, don't be fucking surprised when we tell you to go to hell.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. Now, okay, as much as I would love to keep ragging on James, we have 2 books to get to.
Oh God. Oh no.
So let's take a quick moment and then we'll get to Chucky. I will say right off the bat, this one pissed me off way more than Langford's book. It's like a turbocharged version of the same issues, except myopically focused on one thing.
Oh, golly gee whiz, I wonder why. I wonder if it's that particular thing we're going to talk about. Okay, you know what? We're going to have to go into round 2 for this one.
Wise choice.
All right, let's fucking go. Hit me. Yeah, this was, at first, a very readable book.
Yeah, he started off fine.
Yeah, like this was one of the better authors, where you're going in, you're like, all right, I'm ready for you, Chuck. I'm ready for you and your bullshit. And he comes in and he spends a good, like, half chunk of the book talking about the history of anti-Semitism throughout the ages, and I'm going, yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah, he almost had me. Like, let's say the first 2/3 of this book is just him laying out how terrible it's been to be Jewish pretty much everywhere in the Western world in the last century, like millennium or more.
More.
Yeah.
Two plus millennia. Like, okay. In case it's not apparent to the people at home, we're going to be talking about Israel here. So we're going to have some trigger warnings right off the top because it's going to get pretty bad.
Yes, a reminder, the title of this book is Anti-Semitism in America, a warning.
Yeah, this is your warning. This is going to get pretty bad. Anyway, so yeah, I've done history and religious studies. My minor leading up to my transition into the double major was Jewish studies. So I'm familiar with the history of Judaism in a broad stroke sense, and everything that Senator Schumer laid out in regards to the amount of fucking shit that the Jewish people have had to go through over the centuries is quite frankly depressing. And so, like, yes, his whole thing was also kind of a broad strokes thing. There was some context missing here or there, but honestly, everything he was saying that was leading up to Israel was correct. We have to be clear about this. Everything that the Jews have gone through leading up to that is correct, is factual, and it is fucking awful, and anti-Semitism in that regard is fucked up, should not fucking happen. Now then.
And then he gets to Israel.
Yeah, that's where we start to have challenges.
Because he does the thing. He does the thing that younger, more politically savvy Jewish activists are realizing is not wise, safe, or valid. He is conflating Zionism with Judaism. And not just religious Judaism, but ethnic identity Judaism.
That is the problem. This is the evil genius of anti-Semites, conflating one thing with Judaism. And in this particular case, Zionism equals Judaism. The reality is way the fuck more complex, and that should be the truth that is expanded upon by Chuck Schumer, of all people. And really, everybody in the religion needs to keep saying that, and allies need to keep saying that. But this is not just a piece of propaganda that has been put forth by anti-Semites.
Yeah, now, I do want to say, I want to preface this by saying, I spend a lot of time on Twitter arguing with Nazis.
I don't know why.
I hate myself.
Like, look, can you just value your life for once and get the fuck off Twitter?
Well, partially I do it because it helps me build the sources and references to argue with these people.
All right, fine. But
And I will give it to him. Twitter is an awful, caustic cesspool of which Ford and the Dearborn Independent would be truly proud and just a bit horny.
by the way, for context, Henry Ford, he who created the Ford Company, was a unbelievable anti-Semite who propagated the protocols of the elders of Zion,
Yes.
which originated in Russia, and just distributed it through the Dearborn Independent, as referenced, to as wide of an audience as possible to spread his hateful fucking ideology. Fuck Henry Ford. Rest in piss.
Yeah, the essays that were published in the Independent were eventually compiled into a book now infamously known as The International Jew.
Oh, God, that's right as well.
Yeah,
Fuck
so
me.
Ford was a high-end, like, very, very dedicated anti-Semite. And I imagine that in places where they really are Nazis, there are people who are conflating Zionist and Jew and are saying those words interchangeably. But that is not most people in America.
No, but it is enough where they make it so incredibly loud and so incredibly hard to punch through the noise. And here is the biggest problem with that. There is a portion of the book in chapter 8 American Jews in Israel, that to me best poses a question that requires a lot of thought, philosophical, historical, ethical, just gets to the nuance of what we're trying to unpack here. So walk with me as I go through this, will you?
Yes.
Quote, as I got older, my feelings toward Israel grew more nuanced, molded, and perhaps sharpened by its critics and opponents. When I was a student at Harvard, I began to meet students with radical politics who considered Israel an offshoot of America's global imperialism, an emblem of its overreach and militarism. I remember the day in November 1970 when Jewish students invited the Israeli foreign minister Abba Eban to give a lecture on campus to combat the growing anti-Israel sentiment among some of the leftist students. More than 2,000 people gathered in Sanders Theater, one of Harvard's largest auditoriums, to listen to Ambassador Eban. The members of Students for a Democratic Society, SDS, sat in the gallery and hung a banner, "Fight Zionist Imperialism." When Eban began to speak, they tried to shout him down. Eban pointed his finger up at the protesters in the gallery. He calmly but forcefully, in Etonian tones, he was raised in Britain but made Aliyah to Israel, delivered a statement I will never forget. I am talking to you up there in the gallery, I remember him saying. Every time a people get their statehood, you applaud it. The Nigerians, the Pakistanis, the Zambians, you applaud. There's only one people, when they gain statehood, who you don't applaud. You condemn it, and that is the Jewish people. We Jews are used to that. We have lived with a double standard through the centuries. There were always things the Jews couldn't do. Everyone could be a farmer, but not the Jew. Everyone could be a carpenter, but not the Jew. Everyone could move to Moscow, but not the Jew. And everyone can have their own state, but not the Jew. There is a word for that. Anti-Semitism, and I accuse you in the gallery of it. Eban's words were so powerful the protesters slinked away. They did not attack Israel for my remaining years at Harvard. I cheered. He had expressed a deeper truth about Israel's critics that not only won the argument that day, but strengthened my own resolve to defend Israel's right to exist. That feeling of deep unfairness, that Israel and Jews were held alone and apart from all other nations, and peoples clamoring for self-determination, resonated with so many Jewish Americans. We understood Israel to be a part of those movements, a consequence of the breakup of great European empires and territorial mandates in the Middle East, with all of the messiness and displacement that entails. It was a modern, post-colonial state for a people that had never had one before. The opposition on campus revealed to me that Israel's right to exist was not only being challenged in the Middle East and at the UN, but in certain corners of American politics. I realized I felt a need to defend it. Unquote. This is going to take a while. So, again, we have to be clear. When Ambassador Eban was going through that litany, everyone could be a farmer but not the Jew, everyone could be the carpenter, everyone could move to Moscow but not the Jew, all of that. That is true. There were so many European states that explicitly did their damnedest to ostracize Jewish people from their communities and leave them with the most despicable and unwanted jobs left, and keep them as far away from the rest of society as possible. That is true. It is also true that a lot of these leftists were in fact celebrating the independence of these states in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, throughout the world, but they were not supporting Israel, even though this was theoretically something that they were aspiring for and deserved, given that this was in the 2.5 decades since the fucking Holocaust happened, which, we need to be clear, did fucking happen.
Yes.
It fucking happened. I went myself to Auschwitz.
Yeah, I've been to do it like Holocaust memorials. It's very, very, very obvious that it happened if you've ever actually been to Germany.
So let's get this out of the way as well. This did happen. Here's the problem, though. There's many problems, but this is one of the problems. He says that this is a modern and post-colonial state. That is not true.
Yeah, because post-colonialism refers to previous colonies where the colony already is fighting the colonial government for local control. It is not people going to a place they don't live with guns and slaughtering the populace for their land.
Yes. And to be clear, there were Jews that were living in the area known as Palestine.
Arab Jews.
Arab Jews. But a majority of Israelis are not descended from those people. They are not. It is documented. It is 100% correct. And you cannot tell me that these people fought for their independence.
Also, from all that I can tell from the documentation, very few local Arab Jews were part of the Zionist brigades. They were much more involved in protecting the local Arabs who were Muslim.
Yeah. The Jews that went to Israel and formed the Zionist brigades that forcibly, as you mentioned, Chuck, displaced the native population of Palestinian Muslim Arabs is what we would call colonialism. Not post-colonialism, colonialism. This is one of the things that is so hard for so many people to get over.
And part of what drives me nuts about not just what Chuck is talking about, but how he talks about it, is he castigates most younger Jews who are anti-Zionist as though they're just ignorant of the history.
Yes.
As though his view isn't heavily dismissive of major portions of Israel's early history.
Yeah.
And that if you'd actually read a history of Israel, that you couldn't come to a different conclusion than he has, even though I would be willing to bet that the vast majority of young, radical, anti-Zionist Jews are more familiar with the history of the Zionist brigades than Chuck is.
Far more familiar.
So...
And it's... I need to bring this up again. Him going out of his way to explicitly bind Jewish identity to Israel is something that anti-Semite Nazis do.
Yeah, especially to Jews that do not profess support for Israel. Because he's saying, really, if you're Jewish, you do support Israel, even if you're pro, and that is so deeply anti-Semitic because it implies that it's something about your identity that connects you to what a government that you have no vote in is doing.
You know what the Israeli government has occasionally called these anti-Zionist Jews? Fake Jews.
Exactly. That's so crazy.
That is insane.
But it's also, if you look at the history of how Israel has related to the diaspora, I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I can say that Israel is terribly concerned about extra-Israel anti-Semitism. In fact, they have said in the past that it benefits them for Jews to feel unsafe in places other than Israel.
Of course, because how else are they going to get more Jews to go to Israel?
I'm in the middle of reading Ilan Pappé's chronicle of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine.
Yeah.
And he is the first. He mentions that in the years directly after the formation of Israel, they actually were involved in coordinating some attacks in Jewish places in other parts of the Middle East to drive Mizrahi Jews to Israel.
God.
So Israel is not the core notion that it is impossible for Israel to participate in anti-Semitism, especially in relation to the diaspora, is just false. It just is.
And this also brings up another point that the ambassador attempted to accuse the protesters of, and that was imposing a double standard upon Jews. Are we not, in this case, imposing a double standard on Israel?
Exactly.
Are we not?
We are. That's exactly. And they want that double standard, but only when it behooves them politically in the global sense.
And, it's weird because I feel like in this particular section of the same chapter, even Chuck has inklings as to like the understanding of what's going on. This is actually from the following chapter, chapter 9, anti-Semitism in Israel. This was a rough fucking chapter.
Yes, it was.
But we're going to get through this particular section here. Quote, "The great rise of explicitly anti-Jewish sentiment in the United States after October 7th raises several serious questions about our understanding of Israel and how it is related to anti-Semitism. As a society, we must strive to answer them. Does anti-Semitism fuel criticism of Israel? And does criticism of Israel, when it is exaggerated, venomous, and inaccurate, fuel anti-Semitism? What elements of the current debate about Israel as a country are anti-Semitic or contain shades of anti-Semitism? And, on the other hand, when is criticism of Israel not anti-Semitic at all? Is anti-Zionism the rejection of the Jewish right to a state of their own in their ancestral homeland of Israel a version of anti-Semitism? What words or slogans, used intentionally or not, should be avoided? Just where exactly is the line to be drawn?" Unquote. These are fair questions to ask because I don't doubt Senator Schumer's recounting of various anti-Israeli, anti-Gazan genocide protests that said some pretty fucking horrific shit.
Of course, young student protesters are not particularly thoughtful.
No. And let's not kid around here. There will be plenty of bad actors who will insert themselves into protests regardless of the subject of the protest to make the protest worse.
Yeah, and I imagine an anti-Israel protest is very attractive to young Nazis. That doesn't mean that an anti-Israel protest is invalid.
Yes.
But it does mean you should avoid the young Nazis when they're there.
But regardless, again, these are fair questions to ask. What's the line between criticizing Israel, criticizing Judaism, criticizing Zionism, criticizing all of this stuff? What is the actual line here? And that is a question that is all too often hard for the average person to answer. And that is a fair discussion to have, which is why we're having this discussion right now. And what I would propose is that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same thing. They never were, they never should be, and in fact, to conflate the two is in fact fueling anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and it's like, is there a single line, irrespective of context, that you could definitely draw to delineate somebody who is unsupportive of the Israel project to somebody who's supportive of Jews in general? Probably not. But I would say that there are certain things that are definitely on one side of the line or the other. And a great example of something that is on the definitively anti-fucking Semitic side is the apologetics that he engages in here.
Yes.
Because, like, here's the thing, Chuck. It's a fucking genocide. And that is not my opinion.
No.
That is the opinion of multiple Israeli genocide scholars who have studied the fucking Holocaust.
Yeah.
And Chuck identifies and shames people who represent the genocide as a genocide in Gaza as anti-fucking Semitic. And that's wrong. That is just blatantly wrong. The Israeli scholars calling this genocide are not anti-Semitic. They are pro-Semitic. They are seeing what the world is gathering from the way that people are representing Israel in this and are saying, no, we need to fight back. We need to say that this is bad and it shouldn't have happened, because if we support this just because it's Israel, we're going to get blamed for that shit too.
Yeah.
But he lucky for him, is a rich Jew in New York, so he doesn't really have to worry as much about what disagreeing with some Israeli scholars means.
No, but this kind of brings up a personal journey that I've had. In the build-up to that fucking infamous date, October 7th, 2023, I was pro-Israel. I was.
Most were.
And I was pro-Israel because I believed the message. I believed that Israel does have the right to exist. And I believed that the Jews should have a homeland because holy fucking shit, they have been through it for millennia. Not 1 millennium, 2 millennia, if not more. But seeing what happened October 7th onward, there are some things that were on social media because social media is fucking hell. But there are also times where social media will actually show you shit that's not going to be shown normally. No mainstream media outlet would show such stuff in graphic detail, and I understand to a certain extent why. But the stories coming out of Gaza, the videos, the testimonies. There is
drones designed to just kill 1 child in a house.
Drones designed to kill 1 single journalist that is attempting to simply report the truth of what is happening. And even seeing videos created by the Palestinians themselves to try and show the world what is going on. There is a video that is burned into my mind of a father who is carrying his child out of the wreckage of a bombed out building. It is clearly a child. About 90% of the child still exists in child form. Half his face was fucking gone. The half that was gone, it looked like slices of ham. It didn't look real, but it was real. That was what was happening in Gaza. And you know what was also happening in Israel itself? So many of these politicians have been calling the Gazans animals,
roaches, vermin,
bugs,
yep,
inhuman.
Directly relaundered Nazi propaganda.
Because I'm going
word for word.
Because I'm going to bring up, you know what the Nazis called the Jews?
Cockroaches.
Vermin. Something to
Rats.
be exterminated.
Yep.
They are saying the exact same thing about Palestinians. And seeing those videos and hearing those testimonies and seeing these reports of all of these Israeli propagandists, politicians, military officers and military soldiers, and even the citizens themselves, from random people in Tel Aviv to settlers in the West Bank, call these people children, cockroaches, led me to realize that I was wrong. I was wrong about Israel. I've been wrong for far too long. I regurgitated the propaganda. And I hate myself for it. Even if it's not my fault, I hate myself for it because I contributed to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people dying or being injured or simply being displaced. And this especially, I think this came from a John Oliver episode on Last Week Tonight talking about the Gazan genocide. the phrase. It's a very simple phrase. It's only 2 words. Never again. That phrase arose from the literal ashes of the Holocaust. And what October 7th taught me, and what it taught many Americans, what it taught the world, is that it turns out that phrase means 2 different things to 2 different people. Never again to anyone, and never again to us. Now, I and many others are in the camp of never again to anyone, and I was under the impression that that was the default. Of course, that's what it meant. Why wouldn't it mean that? This is about a genocide. It's not specifically just a genocide of the Jews, because, again, yes, the Holocaust did fucking happen, and yes, the Jews were the biggest part of that. They weren't the only ones. Poles, Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Romani, Gypsies, gays, lesbians, trans people.
And just like assorted political enemies, they killed a lot of people.
They killed all of them. They also are victims of the Holocaust. They were Untermenschen.
Yep.
They were subhuman. The Jews, according to the Nazis, were the worst of all. That is true. They were not the only subhumans.
And you should see some of the things that Hitler said about Slavs. We don't talk about that because that's not what we consider to be the history anymore.
No. And in part, it's understandable because, again, the Jews were the biggest and the most notable portion of those people who were brutally massacred by the fucking Nazis in that short time. But again, looping it back, we and I believed that never again meant never again to anyone. And that includes the Palestinians. That includes any single group of people of an ethnic or religious minority who are being oppressed and massacred by a larger majority. Plain and simple. It's simple. It's easy. It's straightforward. Never again to anyone. But as it turns out, there's another version of that. Never again to us.
Exactly.
Us, in this case, are the Jews themselves. And in this particular case, to Zionist Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see even the most tame and harmless versions of this in the way that Chuck Schumer keeps bringing up the Holocaust and the pogroms and the anti-Semitism that has plagued his family, his people, his religion for millennia. The way he casts it is that Jews have been so oppressed and abused, and truthfully, it's true, throughout millennia, that they must do whatever it takes to survive. And that implies this is not limited to taking the wrong lessons from the Holocaust. That is what we are up against. That is what we are fighting. That is the true divide that we find ourselves in, and what makes this topic so hard is that never again means two different things. And I've described this to other people as well. The way that Israel acts is like a victim of abuse. Someone who has been horrifically abused. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it doesn't matter. Completely and utterly abused to the point of being broken. Where all they know is how to abuse, how to protect oneself through the abuse of others. I said during my time as someone who was pro-Israel that that country feels like it's under siege every single day. And that's because they believe they need to do whatever it takes to prevent another Holocaust, including the murder of children.
Yep.
And the dehumanization of anyone, regardless of their background, who opposes them. Anyone who opposes them is an existential enemy, even if they correctly point out that Israeli Defense Force members are abusing, mutilating, raping, torturing, killing, humiliating, and otherwise destroying Palestinians if it is in service to their version of never again. It is worth it because the Palestinians to them are the new subhumans.
Yeah, I think I will say that I can empathize, at least, with the perspective of Israeli Jews in this particular case more so than others. Because, like, yeah, it is kind of what you'd expect if you go into somebody's home and start killing their family members, that they're going to fight you back. But the reality of as an Israeli is that you are living in a region surrounded by people, like countries, who hate you. Some countries who have the hatred of your people literally in, like, their national slogans.
And by the way, I need to interrupt you and point this out. Not once did Chuck Schumer provide any sort of context or historical clarity to the reasons behind October 7th.
Yes, he does very, very interestingly basically participate in the history began on October 7th fallacy.
When it didn't.
No, it did not.
This has been something that has been going on for, dear fucking God, we are getting close to a century.
Yes, I mean, if you want to know what the history of Israel has been like, you can just look at a map and understand that in 1910, all of that land was Palestinian. And that it didn't become Israel by anything other than basically what's happening right now.
Yeah.
That's how Israel has grown to its size. It's how it intends to become a contiguous country. And I'm not going to say that I get it because I don't super get it, but I see how it happens. That being said, Charles Schumer is not a fucking Israeli.
No, he is not.
And so I find myself wondering, like, why? Why is it that you feel so comfortable attaching all of these things that are not related to a country that you live in, that you vote in, that you have any family ties to, except for maybe people who you knew who lived here and moved there? What is it that makes you so inclined to tie not just yourself, not just people you know, but every American Jew specifically to Israel, despite knowing what it is that you are asking your fellow American Jew not just to identify with, but to accept funding because we fund this country.
We do. We send billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to this country. This is one of the reasons why Israel has been so successful.
They have free universal fucking healthcare, man.
For fuck's sake, they have it better than we fucking do.
We pay for their healthcare.
We
Or more like we pay for their weapons and then they don't have to pay for them. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, we do pay for their weapons, and we have continued. This is the problem. We have continued to pay for those bombs that blow half of a Gazan's face off.
Well, exactly. And like there's a bit in I don't remember exactly where, but he's criticizing basically the fact that, oh, you see all these people and they're protesting Israel, but there's all these other bad things going on in other places. And he mentions Assad's Syria, and he mentions the Uyghur genocide in China. Chuck, we don't fund those. Assad was an enemy. When he was deposed, he went to Russia. President Xi is not our friend. We do not pay him to build Uyghur concentration camps. Those are not the same thing. Of course, Americans are going to protest funding Arab genocide when less than 25 years ago we were attacked specifically for this fucking reason.
We were. And I need to go back to this idea about him clutching his pearls over the settler colonial state. Gonna read a bit of a fun quote here. This was from chapter 9 still. Quote, "Another term that seems unfair to many Jews is when Israel is labeled a settler colonial state. Terms like imperialist, as the PLP-SDS called it when I was in college, or white supremacist Zionists, are also used to describe its inhabitants. These labels have long confounded me. It's hard to be a white supremacist nation when most of the voting population is not white. According to a legal definition of settler colonialism, it is, quote, a system of oppression that aims to displace the population of a nation, oftentimes indigenous people, and replace it with a settler population, unquote." Continuing with Schumer, we'll get to that. In scholarship, a classic example pertains to the displacement and extermination of native tribes in North America with the arrival of European settlers. But the Jewish experience in Israel could not be any more different. Jews can trace their roots to the land of Israel for many thousands of years and have lived there for just as long. It's where the Jewish people originated and where our first temples were built, only to be destroyed by invaders. Jewish people, through the centuries, have looked to Israel as their homeland, not as a place where they could extract resources and exploit whoever was living there at the time. When Israel was founded, Jews came to build a nation, improve the land, and live there permanently, as well as escape the anti-Semitism they had faced for hundreds of years in other parts of the world. Many of those who use the term settler colonialist for Israel believe it is validated by what happened to the 700,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled from their homes between December 1947 and March 1949 in what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, the catastrophe. It is important to know the history around these events. In November 1947, the United Nations passed a resolution partitioning Palestine to create two states between the river and the sea, Jewish and Arab. It is true that it was expected that Palestinians living within the designated boundaries of the Jewish state would move to the Arab state, just as it became clear that the 850,000 Jews who'd been living in Arab countries for generations would also have to move. Under the plan, Jerusalem, under an international control, would be an equal mix of the Jews and Arabs. Jews living for generations in those Arab nations had their property confiscated, their lives threatened, and the vast majority of them were essentially expelled over the next 2 decades. Some 650,000 of them chose to settle in Israel, and their descendants form a large part of the Israeli population. They were not white settler colonialists, but Middle Eastern refugees seeking a safe place to live. Unquote. We got to unpack this.
Yeah, he left out so many important details.
First of all, let's go back to that legal definition of settler colonialism. It is, quote, a system of oppression that aims to displace the population of a nation, oftentimes indigenous people, and replace it with a settler population, unquote. Hey, Chuck, who was living in Palestine before Israel was founded?
Well, according to him, apparently, quote-unquote, Arabs.
It turns out there were people living there, and hey, he said, quote, it is true that it was expected that Palestinians living within the designated boundaries of the Jewish state would move to the Arab state, unquote. I don't know, Chuck. That sounds like fucking settler colonialism to me.
Yeah, basically his claim here is that it's not settler colonialism because the British said to do it, which is the funniest possible answer.
Okay, wait. Are we seriously gonna validate the fucking British?
Yeah, well, because British and Jew are different. I mean, at this point, he's just throwing random crap out there to be like, no, it's different because technicality. No, dude, it's not different. You went to a place that you said was yours where there were almost none of you, and then you moved in a bunch until it was no longer deniable that there were so many of you that you couldn't be gotten rid of, and then you went to the British and were like, hey, can you give this to us? And they're like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah, and by the way, yes, there were a bunch of eventual Israelis that came there from the Mizrahim, I believe.
Yeah.
That throughout the Middle East. But also, I'm fairly sure that the Ashkenazi are a slightly bigger proportion over there.
Yes, also, it's not in every place explicit, but there is racism in Israel, and you'll never guess what the valence of that is. Like, it's Ashkenazi versus Mizrahim or Sephardim. Like, it's just racism. It's just white supremacist racism.
Oh, hey, by the way, what's happening in the West Bank right now? Aren't there fucking...
I might call it settler colonialism because of all the settlers.
Yeah.
As they call them fucking selves.
Yeah, they're fucking settling the place. And this is endorsed by the Israeli government.
Oh, yeah, they have a whole different name for the West Bank to make it sound more Jewish.
Pretty sure it's Samara.
Judean Samaria, yes.
Judean Samaria, yes. Which was, yes, a historical name for the place. But, again, I can't emphasize this enough. There's a reason that we have a Jewish diaspora for a majority of recorded history. There is a reason for that. Yes, they did live there a couple thousand years ago. They were expelled by a couple of empires, most notably the Roman Empire. By the way, haven't you thought about the Roman Empire today?
I just did, damn it.
The tits are temporary. The glory of Rome is eternal. That was my one bit of funny to make myself not unbelievably depressed about this fucking thing. But not the point. Doesn't matter. The point is that, yes, there is a historical ancestry there, but the vast majority of the Jewish population was not living in Palestine at the time. And in fact, one could argue that in Ottoman, that's the Turks, by the way, Palestine, the Jews were treated fairly better than they were in fucking Europe.
Yeah, and also, like, a lot of the Arab Muslims who live in the area of Palestine, like, yes, the Jews, quote-unquote, were expelled, but it's very, very hard to expel all humans from a place.
Right, yeah, no, it turns out it's really fucking hard to do that.
Ethnically speaking, there's significant evidence that the Jews who were there just over time mixed with Arabs and converted because being Muslim in the Ottoman Empire was easier.
Yeah, no, because it turns out that when you're Muslim, you don't have to pay quite as many taxes in said empire.
But suddenly, just with those two things, even though they're Jews, they've lived where the Jews have lived for time immemorial, they're not Jews anymore.
No.
Because I guess suddenly it's not quite an ethno-related, like, and that's my problem with Chuck is that he provides just enough historical context to prove his point. But if you mention the Nakba without mentioning the fucking Zionist brigades, you are being disingenuous about how you are representing the history of Israel.
This entire fucking book, just like Langford's book back before, but this is even fucking worse, is incredibly disingenuous.
Yes, it is cherry picking to the nth degree. And like, Chuck, I get how you can say things like, oh, well, why are you protesting this when other things like what's happening in Darfur is happening? Are children in Darfur who hopefully survive that shit going to grow up and tell their children about how their oppressors were shooting their children's genitals with American fucking weapons? No! So we don't have a reason to protest those things in the same way.
But it is fair that we should protest all genocide. Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true.
But I think we should protest the genocide we're paying for first.
Yeah, no, because there is unfortunately a little bit of a hierarchy here, and the hierarchy of importance is that we are responsible for killing thousands of people.
And not even importance. Like, I'm not going to say anything about but literally what you can impact as an American protesting. If you protest a genocide in Darfur and you're saying we should do something about that, you are requesting American boots on the ground.
Right.
And that is a serious request.
That is
With
very
Israel,
serious.
we're requesting one thing. What if we didn't spend $5 billion a year to fund this?
And we're there's a thing that he brought up where it's like, hey, the river to the sea, what does that mean? What's gonna happen to all the people
implying
there?
that from the river to the sea is implicitly calling for a genocide of every Jew?
And no, I am not advocating for a two-state solution here. I am advocating for one state that allows for Jews and Muslims, Palestinians, and those who call themselves Israelis to coexist peacefully.
Because that is the anti-Semitic core of his claim, which is that there is no difference between Israel's right to exist and Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state.
And by the way, didn't they recently say in the Israeli government policy that they are explicitly a Jewish state?
Yes, well, and not just in Israeli policy, in all of the way that they represent themselves, all of it, they are not a polycultural state. They are a Jewish state first. And the thing is, I think it is perfectly valid and not anti-Semitic at all to say that Israel does not have the right to be an ethno-state.
No, it does not.
Especially not on the American fucking dollar.
No, it does not, because what they are doing right now, at best, is comparable to pre-1990s South Africa. Hey! What was South Africa doing prior to the 1990s?
Apartheid.
Apartheid! Are we seriously going to be doing this fucking shit again? No, we're done with that. But this is what makes this topic so fucking hard. We have to extract and separate Zionism from Judaism, and we have to be anti-Semitic in that regard, and we have to go against both wings of anti-Semitism that say the same thing, that Zionism and Judaism is the same exact fucking thing, and Israel is Judaism. It is not.
And we find ourselves wondering, why? Why is it that this wealthy, powerful American Jew is putting young anti-Zionist Jews to task while spewing regurgitated Hasbara? Like, why? Now, to pull a commonly used trope from analysis, if you look at the donors immediately, it's actually not particularly obvious. Chuck basically has the donors you'd expect as a New York senator. It's banks and entertainment and a couple of other things.
And by the way, that means fucking nothing. Shut the fuck up, Nazis. Shut the fuck up, anti-Semites. That's none of that nonsense.
I didn't even think of that. So actually, it's banks and finance, but that's because those are the biggest industries in his state.
That's the biggest industry in the state of New York.
Yeah, for
Period,
exactly the
plain
same
and
reason
simple.
that James Langford's biggest donor is energy, because that's the biggest industry in his state.
That is true. Period. Full stop. End of story.
Yeah, like he has a surprisingly similar profile, though it's obviously more because he raised about 10 times as much as James because it's a bigger state. But his donor profile is very similar. But Chuck is not just New York Senator.
No. What is he?
He is the de facto leader of the party.
The Senate Minority Leader.
Yes, and he would be the majority leader if they were in the majority.
As he was during the Biden administration.
And AIPAC alone,
Here it is.
just in 2024, donated more than $50 million to Democrats around the country. And that is just AIPAC. That is not considering multiple affiliated PACs that donate and support campaigns in exactly the same patterns. Now, AIPAC is not Israel itself.
No.
But it is a powerful lobbying group specifically on behalf of support for Israel as a Jewish state in America.
Yeah.
And suddenly this entire thing fucking makes sense.
We are back to what we were talking about with Senator James Langford, but replace big oil and gas with, in this case, big Israel.
Y'all thought I wasn't going to bring it around, huh?
This is why we're doing this fucking doubleheader and me getting slightly toasty on beer to try and get through this horrific shit.
Because it's not just for him. It's for every Democrat who took a little tiny bit of the pie. Trying not, he's not just tying himself, but he's tying the entire party to the ship.
And didn't we think about that and briefly touch upon that in Kamala's book?
Yes, we did. Because AIPAC donated to her campaign too. In fact, I think I'd have to look, but at least in 2024, AIPAC donated more to the Biden-Kamala disaster than to Chuck.
Yeah.
Because they're fucking owned. And again, it's
This
so
is
weird to
not-
have
this
these
is-
kinds of conversations
but
when the people
this
are
is
talking
the
about
problem.
Jews. But that's why we started with James, because it has nothing to do with Jews.
No.
And it's also, this is actually very important. It's important to know AIPAC is not just supported by American Jews. The largest and most powerful, wealthy institutions that are in support of Israel at the moment are not Jewish. They are Christian apocalyptic Zionists.
Yes, that is the best thing we could possibly bring up now. I'm so fucking thankful for this because
Yes,
I think we talked about this before, right? Where basically these Christian apocalyptic groups who are overwhelming Republican
Yep.
are 150,000% behind the state of Israel existing.
Because its destruction is necessary for their beliefs of the end-time prophecies that bring Jesus back to life.
Which sounds a little anti-Semitic when you put it that way, doesn't it?
Un fucking Paquito. Like, that's the fucking problem, is that this is a Jewish senator trying to argue that it is his Jewish identity that is driving the support, when it's actually dollars coming from Christian apocalyptic Zionists who want every Jew to die.
This is it. This is the two sides of the same coin. The thing we have been talking about since fucking episode 1. Please hit like and subscribe. That we've been talking about for the past, half year. We are talking about the Mono Party.
Mono Party.
To hide the true interests of the donors, the billionaires, the foreign actors, everyone, not us, behind this or that veil. In this case, in this particular episode, it's religion. Be it Christian evangelicalism, be it Zionist Judaism. It doesn't matter. The point is that both of these senators are bought and paid for and beholden to donors.
Yeah.
Not constituents.
I don't think Chuck's stupid. I think he knows that it's gonna seem a little bit absurd, even to modern Jews, to claim that your religious identity includes within it an actual claim to real land outside of a country that you live in. But I think he knows this idea of Jewish identity and Israeli sovereignty is deeply ingrained in many Jews of all ages just because of the outreach that has been happening over the last 6 or 7 decades. And he's trying to use the specter of rising legitimate anti-Semitism on the far right to scare young Jewish activists back into line, because that is what he has been bought to do.
And I think that is part of it. And again, we have to reemphasize this, that far right, true anti-Jewish, not anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish anti-Semitism is real.
Yes, and getting worse by the day.
For fuck's sake, during the second inauguration of Donald J. Trump, a certain South African billionaire, soon to be trillionaire apparently, did the Nazi salute on live TV twice.
Just in case you missed it the first time, he turned around and did it to the other side of the auditorium.
And you know what is most galling about that? I promise you there's so many things you could point to as galling, and I would normally agree with you. The Anti-Defamation League went to bat for Elon Musk.
God damn it,
to
man.
say that what he did was not anti-Semitic.
Because they're fucking purchased.
By Israel.
And by the Christian Zionists, who would absolutely love to have the richest man in the world continue to be a man who got up on live TV and Hitler Crust.
Do a Hitler twice.
Unfucking believable.
That gif survives to this day. Him allegedly giving his heart to the crowd and then his heart back to Donald Trump when he did a fucking Sieg Heil.
We know what that is. Everybody's seen the Hitler Crust. We know what that is.
He did a fucking Sieg Heil
You
twice.
do not. His heart go out is palm forward towards the audience. Hitler Crust is palm down straight out. It is so fucking obviously different. But that just tells you how engineered that moment was. He didn't walk up on that stage and go, I think I'm just going to Hitler Crust today. No. He walked up there being like, I'll bet I can do this in a way where they're going to say, his heart's just going to go out to people, and I'm going to be able to do this shit in front of the entire world. And I've heard people analyzing why it is that he did that, and a lot of people who are specialists on extremists say they don't do that shit for any reason other than because it feels good to be that in public.
Yeah. But I do also think, going back to your statement about Charles Schumer, there is some genuine belief behind his words.
Because, certainly. In the same way that there is behind James's.
Yeah, because remember that never again fork in the road?
Yeah.
I think he's more inclined to focus on the for us over all others because...
Absolutely.
Because of the unique history of Judaism. That's what makes this such a troubling and frustrating topic to unpack, and why everyone gets upset the moment that you mention it. Because there's real pain there. There's real abuse there. There's real trauma to be had and to unpack and to talk about. And it's just so unbelievably upsetting how many times we had to do disclaimers. Because it's also extremely upsetting how this conversation is so easily hijacked by true evil anti-Semites. How even the most well-intentioned but passionate folk can be easily led down rhetorical paths that make everything they say easily dismissed by those who are committed, for whatever reason, to evil. You say the wrong thing about Israel. If you are not careful about how you say your words, hell, it's entirely possible that everything that I have said and what you have said can easily be seen by someone as anti-Semitic.
Well, of course, especially in the modern world where they could clip out 4 seconds of what we said, because without context, any conversation about this is going to have slips where without the context it's going to sound kind of messed up. But that's the point. And I think what is I would say that regardless of how Chuck is making choices here, I think if I pitched to him that based on his logic, American natives have an unlimited they have an unlimited excuse for violence now. They could kill every single one of us.
That's the problem,
But he
isn't
would
it?
never support that.
No, you would never support
because
that.
They're not Jewish.
But this is the thing, that he did bring up the settler colonialism of America, and it's true. This entire fucking country is cursed because this entire country was built on an Indian burial ground.
Yep.
In fact, this entire fucking hemisphere is built on an Indian burial ground. That's fucking troubling.
And yet we don't hear him calling for a Native American state, do we?
No.
So that's ultimately my concern, is that it's not racism to promote your racial group over everyone else. You don't just have to be bad to other races to be racist. You can just be racist by being like, these people who are my people get an excuse that nobody else does.
And
that's still racism.
And this brings us back to that quote from the Israeli ambassador saying that all of these people get ethno-states, but the Jew is not allowed to. And leaving aside, again, the context where all of these states were, in fact, people who have been colonized by outside powers.
Yeah, and people fighting for local control of a place they already live.
Leaving that aside, even if I were to take his argument at face value, why is an ethno-state laudable? Let's go down this rabbit hole for just a second here. What's happened the last time we lauded an ethno-state?
Well, I mean, what are you considering the last time? Because I can't think of a single time it's ever worked out in history. Ever.
1933 to 1945.
When you said lauded, and I was thinking the Nazis. I'm like, but we didn't really laud the Nazis. We kind of fucked their shit up. But yes, I know what you mean. And I mean, the problem with ethno-states is, fortunately, Germany didn't live long enough to really run into this problem, but Israel is. You, as a Jew in America, have no control at all over what the Israeli government does. And yet, not just the Israelis, but now your elected members of Congress are trying to say that not only do you support it, but you think it's right and that they're actually doing things on your behalf.
And you are being forced into this impossible situation.
And if you don't agree with us, if you don't support Israel like we say and like Israel says you do, you are a race traitor.
You are
the worst kind of thing you can be in a racist system.
And who the fuck said that the last time?
Well, that was a big thing of the Nazis.
Fucking Nazis. So there's no good way to just like put this conversation to bed. This is something that needs to go on and on and on for God knows who the fuck how long. But here's the thing. This entire conversation is fighting against all kinds of anti-Semitism, be it the simple kind that is excluded by Nazism and by generic Christian nationalist right-wing bullshit, but also Israeli fascism.
Yep.
And what we are seeing right now from Chuck Schumer's good friend, Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu,
the war criminal,
is Israeli fascism. We are anti-fascist in this regard.
Yes, we are.
And that is laudable. That should be praised, because being anti-fascist meant being against anti-Semites. So, to Charles Schumer, and to everyone who is still in the pro-Israel camp, think long and hard about what it is you're actually supporting. And think long and hard about those videos that I know you've seen. Think about those testimonials I know you've read. I know you've heard them.
And consider that the idea that Israel either has no right to exist at all or has a right to exist as a Jewish state is a false fucking dichotomy that has been sold to you by people that don't want you to imagine Israel as a place where everyone can be safe. And that doesn't have anything to do with Jewish diaspora people. It also honestly doesn't have to do with most Israeli fucking citizens. It has to do with a very small group of unbelievably powerful right-leaning people in that government who are anticipating making billions selling that land.
Unbelievable.
Ben Gvir has been caught on tape talking about this shit. So is Smotrich.
Yeah. So, if you are going to continue to know better than any of us, because we had to go looking for it, this is accessible to you more than ever. You see all of this shit that is happening in Gaza and in the West Bank. And you're not going to go ahead and call that for what it fucking is, a genocide? If you're not going to sit there and think very long and hard like I did, and I'm not even Jewish, but think very long and hard about what your true values are, and still, with your entire chest, continue to parrot the same talking points, to keep saying the same fucking shit day after day after day after day while people die day after day after day. There's many things that I could say that probably are not appropriate for public broadcast in any way, shape, or form, but in this particular case, I'll leave it at this. You just leave me just immensely, monumentally, and unbelievably exasperated.
And under normal circumstances, I would come up with some long and meandering, pithy way to ask whether or not that exasperation was perpetual.
But not here.
In this case, I'm just going to say, fuck.
No, this is not good enough.
We can do better. We have to do better. And not just for Americans, but for American fucking Jews. Because if we really imagine that you could just be an American Jew and say, you know, what Israel's doing is all right, and we can just move on into the future and nobody's going to use that against you, be honest. Be honest about the history of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so instead of ending on that pithy note, which is not in any way, shape, or form appropriate for this, I need you, Charles Schumer, I need every single American to say from their chest, never again.
For anyone.
Oh my God.
Beer number 3.
Fuck!
Yeah, it was...
That was bad.
Pretty much as heavy as I was expecting. But I think good to talk about, and I think important in the broader context.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because these two men who are admittedly very different in the way that they present things are ultimately symptoms of precisely the same problem, which is that since arguably 2010, but really even before that, because it's not like 2010 was when money suddenly entered politics, we don't really have any representatives anymore. We vote for them, obviously.
Oh, naturally, yeah. We do that every 2 fucking years and the special elections, and then we get really, really excited about the 4-year ones. By the way, the 2-year one is coming up next year. Are you excited, buddy?
I don't know if excited's the word. Maybe dreading?
Yeah, dreading. Dreading's a good word for it. But anyway, continue.
But we don't get choice in the strictest sense. Right? Like this last election was a great example. We had 2 options. Yay Israel or boo Israel, parentheses, yay Israel.
Yeah, and that's why we referenced that in our episode on Kamala Harris. I'm losing track, but you know which one it is. Please hit like and subscribe. But I am just... I'm remembering that entire election vividly once more and remembering how incredibly frustrated I was with Kamala Harris and with the Democratic Party in general, how they just could not bring themselves to extract themselves from their donors and from being we support the state of Israel. And yes, what's happening to the Palestinians is regrettable, but Hamas!
And also October 7th.
And also October 7th! And also the raping and the killing of all of those Jews and whatnot, which turned out not to be really all that true, actually, in subsequent reports. But, Chuck Schumer didn't really talk about that, did he?
No, he did not. I mean, Chuck Schumer managed to mention how many Jews died in October 7th, I think twice or three times, and did not say anything about how many Gazans are dead.
Yeah, and counting, by the way. By the way, remember that ceasefire that was brought about by Dear Leader?
Ceasefire, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. No. That's
How
fucking.
many structures have been destroyed since then? Like 1,000.
Yeah.
I
and counting.
I
But
know.
anyway, not the point. Doesn't matter. The point is also that I distinctly remember during the Democratic National Convention where we had all of these speakers come up and they were praising Kamala Harris because that's what you fucking do during a national convention.
Yep, kiss the ring.
This kiss the ring. Normal. No big deal. They prevented some Palestinians from speaking at the convention as well. But they did have a couple of very notable Jewish Americans speak at that convention.
Can't imagine why that would be.
And Again, need to preface this, or just to have this little disclaimer here. This is not fucking anti-Semitism.
No, we're not saying that it's... The implied thing is not that the Jews are controlling everything.
No!
It's that very, very wealthy people are controlling everything. And yes, of course, some of those people are Jewish. But that doesn't have anything to do with them being Jewish. Like, most rich people are not Jewish.
Yeah, and I am also glad you brought up, like, the rich people are controlling things. Because what I also remember from the National Convention was a certain news anchor. I forget who exactly. It might be Cuomo. I'm not entirely sure. But this was a guy from CNN who was pointing out to his viewers, look at the stadium around me. This was in the United Center in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Look at all of the people in the luxury boxes up there.
Ooh.
Those are all the donors.
Yep.
Look at all the people down here in the floor, the masses. This guy, I'm almost positive it's Chris Cuomo. Could be wrong, but basically Andrew's slightly less cringy brother.
Very slightly.
Very slightly. Even he pointed out during the Democratic National Convention how the donors are separated, are elevated from the rest of us, and who are the ones who are actually controlling the party. And by the way, it goes without fucking saying, that's the case, if not even more so for the fucking Republicans.
Oh, 1,000%.
Right?
Absolutely.
It goes without saying.
Monoparty, it's gonna monoparty.
Monoparty gonna mono all the fucking way to the election and beyond.
Yep.
We are infected with mono.
Oh no.
Yeah!
Who did we kiss?
The donors!
Yeah, clearly.
Because we kissed their ring. Anyway.
No, you're 100% right about that.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, not the point. Not the point. Doesn't matter. The point is that I remembered that as we were recording this particular episode. And I'm also remembering recent events about the rich and powerful in general that tend to control both parties and all the shenanigans that are surrounding that. For instance, Zohran Mamdani recently went to the White House to talk with Donald Trump.
Dog walked that motherfucker.
He did dog walk that motherfucker. It was actually kind of impressive. But you know what also happened around that time? The House voted on a bill condemning the evils of socialism.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot.
86 Democrats joined that bill.
That is a great list of people to primary, by the way.
A great fucking list.
Fantastic.
Fortunately, my representative wasn't on there. Thank fucking God. I checked. But nonetheless, I pointed this out to a friend of mine when we were briefly bringing it up. It is unbelievably fascinating how we in America are so scared of socialism that we will condemn it in legislature.
Oh, yeah. Because
rather than fascism.
Yeah, rather than the active fascism happening that is enabling our government to illegally murder fishermen in international waters.
Funny! Or abduct our citizens in broad daylight.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there was apparently a video out there from Mobile, Alabama.
Oh, no.
Where there were some ICE agents that were like tackling and arm locking a guy in a car wash or whatever, and apparently injecting him with some kind of a syringe. I'm assuming a sedation.
What?
Oh,
no.
I don't know if it's true because this is Reddit.
Yeah, because you can't. Yeah, it's impossible to.
I can't verify this.
But I will say, we know something illegal is going on right now. Mm-hmm. We know from documents that ICE has been working with contractors for a long time, and that against all law, they have been allowing contractors to conduct arrests. That is a recipe for serious human rights violations.
Oh, yeah.
So, is it real? Maybe not. But the legal framework that they have created has created a law enforcement group that we expect out of, and that already is a problem.
That is indeed an extremely big problem.
And yet here these jackoffs are condemning socialism because one dude won an election as mayor of New York.
Yeah, and
pathetic.
And it remains to be seen how effective this one dude is going to be as the mayor of New York, because the mayor of New York City is not exactly known as a particularly authoritative
he's just
office.
a guy.
He's just a guy, a very suave fucking guy.
And a guy who got a hell of a lot of support for something that apparently the donor class and the political class are very afraid of.
Funny that. Interesting.
It's almost like when you finally have the balls to give the people what they want, they will rally the fuck behind you.
It's interesting. And it's also interesting how President Trump was dog-walked by Mamdani.
Yep.
And how, honestly, if we had Mamdani as President Trump's closest advisor rather than the noted ghoul Stephen Miller,
who knows where we'd be?
We might be calling the president comrade every now and then.
We might have nationally owned grocery stores. Who knows?
Because remember how back in 2016, how President Trump, well, soon to be, unfortunately, President Trump was billing himself as, even though he was running as a Republican, he was really beholden to neither party.
Yeah.
And there were some, sweet, blessed hearts who were thinking that maybe this guy would be such an independent and a maverick that he would actually do some anti-corrupt shit.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I think I just dismissed those people as sweet summer children.
They were sweet summer children, but bringing it back to how he was talking with Mamdani.
That's true. He's a malleable dude.
Imagine if he had run as what he originally was a while ago, a Democrat, and he happened to have a Mamdani-esque person as his personal Stephen Miller.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've maintained this for a while, that I don't think Donald Trump believes and most, if not all, of the politics that he ran on. I think that Donald Trump is an unbelievably talented media personality. And I think that he, along with probably a lot of much smarter people, studied what kind of racist populist shit he could say, and he just said it. And as soon as Mamdani popped up and ran a different kind of campaign, he was like, oh shit, that's another piece. So if I smile and say that he's a smart guy, the guys that think he's smart will think I'm smart too.
Yeah, and it's pretty good.
So he's not beholden to either party, but in the way where basically he's beholden to anybody with any level of attention. Yeah. He's a baby.
He's a baby. He's a baby who just wants to be an occasional sex pest and an occasional racist and really stupid fucking rich and preferably not in jail.
But that is why he's the perfect candidate for the mono party.
Yeah.
Because all you need to do to change his mind is give him a little bit of money and put somebody in front of him to listen to. That's it.
That's it.
That is 1,000 times cheaper than trying to, build a coalition or convince a politician that what you want will be good for your people when it obviously won't be.
Or worse yet, get that guy in power and then actually build shit.
Yeah, no. Way too expensive. Much, much more fun to just be an asshole to everyone that you can.
And in fairness, if we were actual psychopaths and if we actually didn't give a shit about the state of things in this country, and if we didn't give a shit about anyone in the world, period, boy, this is funny.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. For a nihilist, this is a hilarious episode of America.
This is the best.
Yeah.
This is the best fucking thing that could ever happen because we are witnessing the death of the American empire in real time.
Well, I'm not sure if I've said this in previous episodes, but I say a lot of the time in real life, the Cold War did not end in 1991.
Yeah, no, you've mentioned this, but go on.
The Cold War went from a war between America and the USSR for control over the world to a war between America and the rest of the world to be king.
Yeah.
And we're losing that war. And we should, because we're not a good king.
No, we absolutely should fucking lose this war. And
it'd be nice if we had a country afterwards, but
no, it'd be super fucking nice, but we'll get there when we get there. And at the time of recording, in the year of our Lord, 2025, November 24th, we're just seeing some really fucking weird shit happen in our government. More so than usual.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, did you expect that vote with the Epstein files?
I expected there to be some defections. I did not expect it to be fucking everyone.
Everyone but one fucking guy.
One idiot who I guess just wants to not have his job later. I don't know.
Chuck somebody from the 3rd District of Louisiana.
I'm going to maintain some fucking dumbass who doesn't want his job. Because what? Yeah. The only vote for let's protect the pedophiles? What's your plan, dog?
Now, again, this doesn't necessarily mean much because there's some stuff in there where the Justice Department under Attorney General Pam Bondi is going to try to redact as much as possible.
Oh, totally. I just mean that, especially if you know that that's the case, it's weird to be the one vote that's still like, you know what? Even if they're gonna make it so Trump's not implicated, I still think the pedophiles should, keep their seat. That's just so weird.
It's so fucking weird.
But you know what? I'll bet that has something to do with fucking money. Because that's the source of all of this. You look at somebody and you say, okay, I understand what your priorities are based on what theoretically your constituents want. Why the fuck are you acting this way?
Yeah.
And that's what this episode was about.
Yeah.
That the answer is always somebody fucking paid them to do this.
Yeah, and the people who paid him to do this, we're seeing in the emails that keep trickling out with each drop that compared to Pizzagate. Do you remember Pizzagate?
Oh, I remember Pizzagate.
Pizzagate was the best, wasn't it?
Sure, for sufficiently broad definitions of best.
By best, I mean it was fun to try and kind of decode some of this shit.
Yes, it was a solid reality TV show episode, for sure.
In comparison, we have these emails coming out between Jeffrey Epstein and various other people that are pretty fucking straightforward in comparison.
Oh, yes.
Very straightforward.
Startlingly so.
And among other things, Donald Trump is one of the most evil fucking people that Epstein has ever met, which is fucking rich, by the way, coming from Jeffrey I fucked underage girls Epstein.
Yeah.
That is rich. That is amazing, actually. And at first, I was like, wait a minute. You think that Donald Trump is even more evil than you? Donald Trump is a fucking stupid idiot. And then there was that time where he was on Air Force One. We are just speed running all this shit that's happened, by the way.
There's much more to it.
Oh, there's much more to it. But there was that time on Air Force One where there was a reporter, I forget her name. I am so sorry to the person involved that I forget her name. But she was asking about the Epstein files, and Donald Trump simply responded, "Quiet,
quiet, piggy."
Yeah, and
dude is sundowning.
That's like a holy fucking
bro
shit.
Forgot where he was for a second
because normally Trump, being him, has some kind of weird, dumb pithy response where he'll just kind of ramble a little bit about like you don't know any better, you don't understand what's going on.
You're
and all
a terrible reporter.
Yeah,
you know you're fake news.
and everybody is saying this and everybody's saying that, but he just didn't even bother. This was the time that he decided to say, "Quiet, Peggy."
Yeah.
That was weird.
It was weird.
That was really fucking weird. And you know what was also fucking weird? Again, we're fucking speed running through so much shit. So much shit is happening.
Yes.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning.
Yes, she is, and potentially others will follow.
There are rumblings. There are rumors. Now, again, we don't put a lot of stock in rumors because these are gossip rags. Who the fuck cares about what they have to say?
True.
But we also heard rumblings and rumors in the build-up to the Epstein files being voted on that so many Republicans were going to defect. And we were like, oh, please, give me a fucking break.
And then
everybody but one fucking guy in the 3rd District of Louisiana voted for it, which was a what the fuck?
Yep.
Moment.
They got us.
Well played. Good job.
Truly surprising.
You fucking got us. Good job.
You unbelievable ghouls.
Unbelievable ghouls. Where I'm kind of going with all of this is just the arrogance of it all.
Yep.
And this was something that Jon Stewart brought up in one of his most recent Daily Show appearances, where he was talking also about the Epstein emails. And he was talking about how that was comparing to Pizzagate. And he was comparing how with all of the emails of Pizzagate, you had to go into this fucking decoder ring bullshit to try to parse out whether or not there was a pedophilia ring being run out of a goddamn basement of a pizza store in DC.
Yeah, kind of escape room-esque goofiness.
Super goofy alt-reality bullshit nonsense where pizza appears 78 times in all of these emails from John Podesta. Why is that? Maybe because the guy likes fucking pizza.
Maybe he's a pizza guy. Maybe he buys a lot of pizza for all of these interns. Who knows?
Meanwhile, with the Epstein emails, they're saying, it's kind of hard to figure out what exactly he's talking about here. Like, it's not as clear. These are the same people, Jack Posobiec and Alex Jones and Bill Maher and various others who are saying this. And then it's like, it's pretty fucking apparent that they're talking about trafficking underage women.
Yes, it is.
They're bringing over a Burmese girl.
Yeah, it gets explicit really quick.
And you know what? The funniest fucking one that has popped up so far in this fucking shit pile of horrific nonsense that we're dealing with right now? Does Putin have the photos or whatever of Trump blowing Bubba?
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
No! Now, I know what you're thinking. I do not believe that President Donald J. Trump, prior to being the President of the United States, in the company of Jeffrey Epstein, giving a blowjob to ex-President William Jefferson Clinton, also known as Bill Clinton, also known as Bubba.
I hate this show. That's the thing, is that it's starting to feel like a fever dream to me.
Because I'm saying in part that, like, I don't believe this. In part because Jeffrey Epstein's brother, yeah, I know, Jeffrey Epstein has a brother who's not a fucking unbelievably awful piece of shit. He's just probably...
Mark's just Mark.
He's just Mark. He said, no, Bubba is not Bill Clinton.
I would like to point out that within that statement is an interesting piece of information, which is that Mark knows there is a Bubba. And that there is a Bubba that Trump did blow. So that's weird.
Yeah, but it's also weird because we know that Donald Trump is a teetotaler.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't drink. As far as we know, doesn't use drugs recreationally. As far as we know, Donald Trump Donald Trump Jr. is a different story.
No, we're not talking about Don Jr.
We're not talking about Don Jr. We're not talking about the cokehead. But Donald Trump is not a guy you would expect to be part of an orgy that would be including the giving of a blowjob by putting someone's dick in his mouth.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like Trump.
That doesn't seem like him.
Which makes you wonder, what the hell does that mean?
What the hell does that mean? Does Bubba mean something else?
Who knows?
Who knows? And by the way, who fucking cares?
And that is what I was going to say, is that the question really is, why the fuck is this what we're talking about? People can't afford rent. People can't afford their fucking baby formula. Why the fuck are we asking and laughing and Googling about whether or not President Trump sucked off Bill Clinton?
Because it's funny. And
But not just because it's funny.
It distracts us.
Because motherfuckers are profiting from this.
They are profiting.
They're paying all of these actors to run this trash reality show, run literally by a man whose career was running reality shows, so that we do not notice that nobody, except for one man who in 2024's campaign was funded by 65% small dollar donations under $200, is talking about universal fucking health care.
Who is that one guy, by the way?
Daddy, Bernie Sanders, the only man with any semblance of dignity or honor left in the fucking Senate. And that is who we're talking about next.
Yay,
Because partially I set up this horrible gauntlet of torture for our lovely host Joseph, because I knew that our next exploration will be much more exciting for him.
You know what the original plan was? The original plan was today we were just going to talk about Senator James Langford and his fucking stupid, folksy self-help bullshit.
And here we are 2 hours later, knee-deep in Israel. You are welcome, listeners.
Fuck you. But
I promise I think we have gotten a bit to the end of the useful life of reading slop generated by people that have been bought and paid for.
Yeah,
so I think we should try maybe hearing from the only man that we know of that isn't part of this system, and then branching out a bit.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you what. I'm not an alcoholic.
Not yet.
Not yet, but hopefully never. But there's a fucking reason that I opened 3 goddamn beers in the midst of this fucking episode that we are recording right now. And it's not just because of the subject matter, but it is the subject matter. I mean, for fuck's sake.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
For fuck's sake. I just talked about a child with half of his goddamn face blown off.
Yep.
But it's not just that. 2 out of 3 of books that we read in a group are fucking shit.
Yes, they are.
This is kind of what we build ourselves to be. We are the podcast thus far, please hit like and subscribe, that reads political slop that are billed as New York Times bestsellers so you don't have to. And tell you how at times they've got the right idea. Is this sounding familiar yet? But mostly how they're missing the point of why everything kind of fucking sucks.
And I think we've probably gotten far enough in this exercise to maybe have a broad answer, which is that they are fucking being paid to miss why everything kind of sucks.
They are being paid.
Because it's very profitable for the people profiting from making things terrible for us not to goddamn notice.
For fuck's sake. Let's run down the list of authors that we have read so far. Tammy Bruce.
Oh, God. Okay, Tammy Bruce.
Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson. And then after that, we dealt with Pete Hegseth.
Oh, I forgot we read Pete. This has been quite a journey.
This has been quite the fucking journey. Who the fuck was after Pete Hegseth? It was somebody on the left. We'll probably get back to them at some point.
Honestly, the truth is it doesn't matter.
It probably doesn't matter.
That's what we've learned, is that it's just the same crap over and over and over again, meant to keep those deeply enmeshed in the party system angry at the people who are not at fault for their suffering.
Either angry or sedate.
Yeah, which is almost worse.
Yeah, it's almost worse because we have Leah Littman, God bless her. We have Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, God bless them. We have Kamala fucking Harris.
Oh, God, yeah.
Every single one of them thus far. Oh, I remember now. Jake Tapper.
Oh, Christ. You're right, yeah, the Biden book.
There it is. I remember now. Jake Tapper. Thanks.
More slop.
Thanks, Jake. Fuck you. But all of these people, either, and then after that, Neil Gorsuch alongside Leah Littman, and then after that, before Kamala Harris, fucking Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yes.
And then just now, James Lankford and Chuck Schumer. Every single one of them has been a showcase of what they're saying ending up being the exact same thing.
For the exact same purpose.
And it's either to be mad at the other person or to trust the system. And the system is what fucking got us here in the first place.
Yep, because the system wants us to continue being a commercializable, financializable asset.
Because they want to exploit and extract.
Because they have to keep growing forever and ever in a terrarium that is very distinctly a closed fucking system.
Yes, the hockey stick must go up.
Yep, and when the hockey stick must go up, but the environment that you're in is saturated, when you have gotten all the customers you've gotten, you don't compete over new customers anymore. You compete over control. And that's where we are.
That's where we're at.
Paying people to lie to each other so that we don't understand where the control is anymore. So even if we wanted to march on someone, we wouldn't know who.
We wouldn't know who. We can't even afford to march.
Precisely.
And that was shown to us by our palate cleansers with Owen Higgins. How do we combat the amount of billionaires that control our social media and regular media sphere? And it's to eliminate the idea of there being a billionaire.
Yeah,
which is a great fucking idea, Owen. How the fuck do we get there?
Yeah, unfortunately, my billionaire eater 5000 is in the shop.
Or Paula Ramos talking about how we can't neglect the people that we rely on to be bulwarks against fascism because these people have gone through similar experiences either right now or in their home country or their ancestors have gone through it.
Yep.
Or we can't even rely on our institutions as
the Supreme Court is trash.
as described by Erwin Chemerinsky.
Thank you, Erwin.
Thank you, Erwin. Or Maria Ressa.
Yeah.
Talking about journalism in general and the fight for fucking truth as it exists, who is currently not in her home country because she's basically exiled for her own safety.
Yep.
And now we're prepping, spoiler alert, to talk about Daddy, Papa, Poppy, also known as the senior senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, in how to fight oligarchy and how to be okay about being angry about capitalism.
And we'll see if he has solutions.
We'll see if he has solutions, but honestly, everyone that we've talked about so far has no solution.
Yep. Now, I will say, Bernie, as this person, will have been the only person that we'll read from who's actually been like, yeah, universal health care. So we'll see, but
we'll
you're
see.
Right.
But even though we have, let me correct that. We have long-term grand and ideal solutions, which is to abolish billionaires, which is to essentially understand and truly talk to people who have bread and butter issues that need to be addressed and not simply assume that they can be relied upon.
Yeah.
Drastically reform our institutions, drastically reform the very idea of information as it currently exists. By the way, AI is becoming a thing.
Yeah, and I imagine Bernie's just going to be like drastically reform the campaign finance system. The question is still, how?
How? And
Yeah.
so, while I am so fucking happy to spend the next week or so actually reading a book I want to give a goddamn shit about rather than being forced to essentially speed read through fucking shit that is Langford and Schumer and everybody else prior. Let's be honest with ourselves, man. Bernie is going to have great ideas, but he's not going to have a solution.
That's true. Bernie is not going to tell us how to be Zohan.
Yeah. So, I think you're right. I think that after we read Bernie, after we listen to Papa and get his words of wisdom, we're going to have to rethink how we're fucking doing this. Because it is... Listen, I sound really fucking anguished right now.
Yeah, just a little bit of malaise.
And I sounded so fucking depressed and what's the word? Fucking full of violent rage earlier in this episode. And I'm, as you said off the top, may have a sanity that is in a current tailspin.
Maybe a little.
Just a little bit. Despite the fact that we're just yapping into a void, I have to admit I am genuinely enjoying yapping into a void with you.
Oh, yeah, and I think if we find the right place to look, we'll find what we're looking for.
We'll find what we're looking for.
It's just clearly
It's
random books by political operators are not the solution.
No, it's not it. We've already proven our thesis.
Yep.
The monoparty is real.
Mm-hmm.
The monoparty exists for its donors and not for you.
And we can thank our lucky stars that they've only gotten the circuses of bread and circuses correctly.
Yeah, they don't have the bread anymore.
Thank God.
They don't fucking bother with the bread anymore.
Because if we had both of those, we'd probably just be stuck in New Rome for the next 300 years.
Yeah, and by the way, New Rome is fucking collapsing, and if it's not because of our enemies abroad, it's because the planet is trying to fucking kill us.
Yes, sir.
And so, among other things, we keep referencing men in funny beards.
Yes, we do.
We might want to read some of those tracks from those men with funny beards.
Maybe that's what we'll start next. Start on the completely different end for men who really did want to make change.
Yeah, because, you know, midterms, I don't know if you were aware of this, midterms are coming up.
Yeah, I've heard.
And supposedly the Republican Party is scared fucking shitless because they see the poll numbers and they see that they have no popularity whatsoever.
Yep.
What also needs to be said, however, is that even though a generic Democratic candidate would beat the Republicans,
They're not going to be any better.
no, because the Democratic Party is not popular. And you know why they're not popular?
Because they don't listen to people. Because they're part of the mono party.
Because what the fuck happened at the end of the shutdown?
Oh, God, they just caved.
They
for
caved.
no reason.
They folded like neatly dried laundry.
Yes, they did.
Because all they got was the promise of a vote.
Mm-hmm. They got everything that an actor would need.
Yeah.
Something to talk about in front of the press.
Like, I cannot even make the argument that the optics are good because the Republicans are going to own the fact that our healthcare premiums are going to go into space like a dick rocket.
I'm sure the Democrats will find a way to fumble that advantage.
And you know what's funny? There were some, like Jon Stewart, when he was having his
Oh, yeah, I remember.
real fucking bad day.
How are they gonna squander this?
Yeah, he called that immediately after all of the elections that we had, including but not limited to Zoran Mamdani actually winning.
Took those motherfuckers like 4 days to flush everything down the toilet.
It's honestly impressive.
But we know why now. Because this is part of what I really liked about doing this podcast. Reading this stuff while this stuff is happening, especially after the craziness with Biden, the end of Biden's presidency, and his inevitable decline. I don't know. A lot of stuff makes a lot more sense to me now, because now I know what I'm watching. I'm not watching politics. I'm watching a reality show. And I will give it to James Langford. He made one very important point, was that he noticed, now ironically he is within this group, so he's a little foolish, but he noticed how many of his colleagues had changed from politicians to performers.
Yeah, he mentioned how...
And he's right. He's one of those people.
Yeah.
But like...
but he's a different kind, because he pointed out, I remember this quote where he was talking with one of his colleagues, and they were saying, like, watch this. I'm going to say something really inflammatory on camera. Did so, got the clicks, got the likes, and put that performance away behind closed doors. James Langford is a different kind of actor, but he is the same... He's in the same play.
Yes.
He is the supposedly reasonable person.
Yep.
The one that everybody will turn to for just dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Somebody that when the loud, angry Republicans get too tiring, you can come to James and remind yourself that, yes, it's just a party of God, and they love you, and they care about your priorities too.
We go back.
sure.
We go back to decorum.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to compromise. We go back to reasoned, civil debate and dialogue about issues that we're going to come together for and bring about a bipartisan resolution.
You know what? That would be fucking great if they represented us, but I don't want a bipartisan resolution from all of our fucking donors.
Bit of a Freudian slip there.
Yeah, clearly.
But this also brings about... I watch some bread tube shit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one guy in particular that I watched, Thought Slime is his name. And he was talking about how liberals, and more specifically libs, will trip over their own dicks to eulogize Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk, who managed to find another hole in his body.
Oh no.
Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, because you gave no peace to nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
Not the point, doesn't matter. I don't celebrate his death. Like, I don't celebrate death, but I am not going to eulogize this fucking asshole. Not the point, doesn't matter. Thought Slime was going into why libs do the thing. And they do the thing in that they are so beholden to the system and so beholden to decorum because they have this mindset that what we have right now is the end all be all.
Mm-hmm.
It is the zenith of politico-economic society.
The end of history.
The end of history. And that any sort of deviation from it is a mistake that will be corrected in the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, they're turning a little bit into make America great again kinds of people.
A little bit. And the funny thing is that according to the lib, the best way to approach, let's say, for the sake of argument, a fascist, is to allow the fascist to proclaim their ideals onto the biggest possible stage so that their ideas can be debated on their merit and shown to the rational, reasonable, and perfectly normal populace that these ideas are bad and wrong, and they will buy instead the ideas that are being presented by the normal liberal folk.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's okay for them to say this heinous shit so long as they stay within the rules of decorum. as long as they don't explicitly say kill all the Jews, as long as they don't explicitly say kill all the gays. Instead, if they stay in the lane and say, Jews are controlling a lot of the media.
Yeah, or I believe that biblical law is correct, which it just happens to say in there that you should stone both gays and sluts to death.
Yeah, but they're staying within the rules, and therefore, while what they're saying is crass and awful and despicable, they're still playing by the rules, and therefore, you should go high when they go low.
Yeah, that's worked so well.
And come to think of it, why is it that they keep putting themselves out there in the marketplace of ideas?
Who, fascists?
Yeah.
Because fascists do not debate. Fascists preach. And for them, it's an unlimited good for them to have a platform to preach from because they never compromise. So they have nothing to lose.
And they also don't really give a shit about objective truth. They don't
No,
believe,
they do not.
They don't believe in objective truth.
They, in fact, are validated and legitimized by talking on a stage with people who do care about those things. Because the notion is that if you're debating somebody who cares about those things, you care about those things too. So when you confidently assert that Jews control all the media, people go, oh, maybe he has a paper that says that.
Yeah.
It's a trick.
And by the way, if we're going into this free marketplace of ideas, like, why would they play fair?
True. Why bother?
Because they have the money. And what do you do in a marketplace? You advertise.
Mm-hmm. You put your finger on that scale.
Yeah, and you're going to advertise as much as possible with your fucking money. And who has more money?
Well, yeah, often people who are trying to hurt other people for profit.
Yeah, and those tend to be the people who are more than willing to cater to, tolerate, or otherwise try to use. We tried this back in the 30s, guys. This didn't fucking work. Try to use the fascists for their own gains because fascism is apparently less scary than socialism. All of this to say that the lib idea of America as this kind of society is what is being pushed forward by James Lankford and Chuck Schumer. There was a passage in Chuck Schumer's book where he was talking about his experiences in Harvard, where he was dealing with the Vietnam War protesters and with the SDS and how they were doing a sit-in and how that eventually prompted a very severe military crackdown.
Yep.
And how he took that lesson as, listen, I agreed with them on a lot of things. There were some things I didn't agree with them on, but I was with them on a lot of things. But this extremism showed me that they went way too far on this.
Yeah, okay, so that implicitly means that the state determines what is right and moral?
Yeah, and
and
also, where does the real change happen? Because I want you to remember also from the Vietnam War protests what happened in Ohio.
Oh, yep. I mean, how many people did they shoot? 9, 10, 15, something like that? A bunch of students? I think the youngest one was 19.
They shot students.
Yep.
And it was televised.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, that pissed off a lot of fucking people.
Mm-hmm.
And while, yes, his point was that it led somehow to Humphreys losing to Nixon, what the fuck happened after that?
Yeah, not a lot of good stuff for real people.
And what the fuck happened after the shootings in Ohio, after these Vietnam War protests kept building and building and building and building, and information kept getting leaked and leaked and leaked by these so-called extremists? The Vietnam War would eventually end.
Yep.
And the same guy who won that election over Hubert Humphreys became the first and to date only president to resign in disgrace.
Mm-hmm. After trying to use the state against his political opponents.
So,
not saying that there's any parallels to now, but
not saying any parallels to now. No, sir, not at all, none whatsoever. But the point is that I felt like Chuck had the exact wrong conclusion.
Yeah. He saw the state react and was like, "Oh, well, we can't do that." And that presumes that the state is good in helping people, at least fundamentally.
And that is the main point of libism.
Yes, sir. Well, because the new liberal descends not from a political movement, but from the liberal consensus of the last half of the 20th century.
That the last half of the 20th century is normal.
Not just normal, but the best form of society. That if we move away from that form, that humans will just be like, oh, well, this is worse, so I think we should go back.
And that while there is potentially some tinkering around the edges here and there with some mild reforms here and there, we stop striving for something that I would say is a little bit more American than what is being said here. Striving for a more perfect union.
Mm-hmm. In a way other than removing all diversity, which is apparently how Pete Hegseth has decided we're going to do it.
Yeah, or removing the capability to have free speech over whether or not you're Antifa.
Yeah.
Or redefining what it is to be an American citizen.
Because in some ways, MAGA's message is liberal.
Not necessarily liberal, but lib.
Yes.
There is a difference, and this is the thing that we need to hammer home. There is a difference between the ideology of liberalism and libs.
Yeah, that's very true. Because modern libs aren't exactly liberal-minded. But I mean that MAGA
neolibs, neocons, they're the two sides of the same fucking coin, kind of like a monoparty.
They both want to return to this semi-historical, semi-mythical, like neoliberal consensus.
Kind of like fascism would do.
Yes, well, I mean, any system could get you there, but fascism will get you there the fastest.
And so, all of this to say, I'm pretty sick and fucking tired of reading lib books.
Same. And that really has been what we've been reading, is just libs.
With the occasional palate cleanser, just to make sure that we don't choke on the lib.
Oh, yeah. And I would say that the palate cleansers were more like context to help us understand why the lib books were so bad.
Yeah. And now I think that I think that you, dear listener, have a fairly decent understanding of what libs are.
Mm-hmm.
Libs are not necessarily, but they do include Democratic Party members. I almost said Democrat. God, I hate how that has entered my lexicon. It includes, but is not limited to, the Democratic Party, but it does, in fact, also include the Republican Party.
Yes, absolutely. Especially these, what would now be considered by MAGAs to be like rhinos. These
Republicans in name only.
Which is basically to say McCain conservatives.
Basically McCain conservatives or fucking Tom Massey at this point.
Yeah, but even McCain-style conservatism is within that broader context of the liberal consensus.
Yeah.
So, it's very much libs are just people who are looking at this idea of what they had and thinking, oh, all we need to do is lib out harder. That's what we messed up. We didn't liberal enough. No. The world has changed.
The world has changed. And we need to change with it.
Yes, adapt or fucking drown.
Adapt or drown, because we're drowning right now. We're drowning and also on fire.
We are fighting over who to drown first. And it is the worst.
Yes, and this is a message for primarily Democratic voters. It really is primarily for Democratic voters. But this is also for independents. And this is also for the not MAGA people who are hopeless. That we fucking hate libs too.
And honestly, even the MAGA people who are hopeless. Because you voted for Donald Trump because he fucking lied to you.
He lied to you. He lied to you. He lied to us. He lied to every single fucking person.
And your problems aren't meaningless.
It's true that things are not affordable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's true that we can't afford healthcare anymore. It's true we can't afford an education anymore.
It's true people have no idea whether or not their children will be able to have a similar life that they did.
And it's true that we don't know what's true anymore.
Yep.
Because AI slop is real.
It's true that we have probably the least reliable communication networks that we've had in a century.
The mainstream media is beholden to the mono party, to
Oh,
the
yes.
libs. It doesn't matter if it's CNN or Fox or MSNBC.
Yep.
They're all beholden to the same fucking thing.
Yeah, except for maybe Newsmax, which I think is just owned by somebody who is genuinely schizophrenic. But
Good God. That does not make it much better. The point is that we're done with libs. We're done. This is no longer something where we're going to be reviewing libs and libism and all of its colors, be it Democratic, be it Republican, be it really fucking anything. We're done with that. We've already diagnosed the problem. We have confirmed through all of our research this problem is real, it's insidious,
and it is pervasive.
it is everywhere, and that there's no easy solutions to it.
But hey, there have been problems with hard solutions before, and I'll bet there are some beardy men that might have some things that we'd be interested
There'd be
reading.
some beardy men out there who may have solutions. There may be some men out there who rest in power, may have written some books on the dawn of everything, or maybe debt, or maybe the utopia of bureaucracy, or maybe just bullshit jobs in general. Do you know who I'm name dropping by
I
now?
know who you're name dropping.
David Graeber.
Yes.
Rest in power, bro. But him, the funny bearded men, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, and others of their ilk are among those who we should start looking to
Yep.
and thinking about, really discussing their ideas.
And their cultural context and what kind of problems that they were in that they use these to solve.
And it's not necessarily going to always be apples to apples.
Of course not.
And there's going to be some things that they say that's some really fucking stupid bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, anything written more than 20 years ago is going to have some weird version of something.
But it is my opinion, and my opinion of my fellow yapper into the void, that it's time to start looking for solutions.
Yes.
And it's time to get away from all of these bestsellers, which we have determined means fucking nothing.
Correct.
And it's time to start looking at pieces of literature, not necessarily books, maybe articles.
Yeah.
Maybe just blog posts in general.
The wider marketplace of ideas.
Oh, God.
Sorry, it's a word that will be in my lexicon no matter what I do.
I know. There's a lot of deprogramming we have yet to do.
I know, right?
But the point is that with this particular episode, I think this is episode 13.
That's correct.
Lucky 13.
Yes, sir.
I think we're fucking done.
I think we're fucking done.
And it's time to start a new season.
Yes.
And what better way to kick it off than with Daddy?
Agreed.
He is the gateway, as it were.
Yes, very much a gateway drug to wider policy decisions.
But instead of that gateway drug being Soma, let's free our mind from the binary political mindset that we find ourselves in and think about something a little bit more creative. And let's make things actually better for everybody. Stay safe, friends, and I'll see you next year.